Hello there, welcome to Business Daily on Trust Television. On this program, we'll bring you up to speed with major developments in the world of business and the economy, not just in Nigeria, but from all parts of the world. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for always joining on the program. First, we begin with the headlines for today. Beginning from the oil sector, oil production, Nigeria's crude output drops by 23% in 3 years. And now, anti-money laundering, UK Watchdog finds Guaranty Trust Bank over failures. You get to hear more on these stories in the Business Roundup segment of the program. However, I'll take a short breather. When I come back, time to tell you whether the bulls or the bears dominated the market. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's get straight into the numbers and see what the numbers are saying, or rather where the arrows are pointing towards. Now we'll begin from the local buzz, talking about Customs Street in Nigeria, the Nigeria Exchange. We're seeing the Nigeria Exchange shed 0.48% at the close of the second trading day of the week. The all share index settled at 51,446.60. Now on the activity chart, we saw a total volume of 345.5 million shares valued at 8.3 billion naira changed hands in 3,900 transactions on the floor of the local buzz. The equity cap settled at 28.02 trillion naira. Now let's go over now to other buzzes in Africa. From the JSE is also in positive, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and in Ghana we are also seeing a positive trend in Ghana, 0.09% and 0.92% in South Africa. Of course, South Africa battling issues around load shedding of its power utility, Eskom. Going down to the United States, in Wall Street, stock futures were slightly higher in early Wednesday trade. Now it's building on a positive start for the year 2023. The moves have featured a relief rally for more risky areas of the market, such as tech, but investors are still cautious ahead of the CPI numbers from the United States expected on Thursday. Now we're looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, the Nasdaq Composite. Now the market is treading on a path of caution. What will be the picture that inflation numbers in the U.S. will paint for the markets? Those numbers are expected to come in Thursday. Going down to the European Strait, European markets are also opening in positive zone, 0.07% higher for the FTSE 100 in the UK, the CAC run in France 0.09% higher, and the DAX in Germany is up 0.21%. So it's largely positive for European markets, as you can see from the chart right here. Now, in a speech delivered in Sweden's Riksbank, Jerome Powell, that's the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, noted that stabilizing prices requires making tough decisions, and also these decisions can be politically unpopular. The speech did not contain any direct clues about where policy is headed for a Fed that raised interest rates 7 times in the year 2022. Now let's go over to the Asia Pacific region and see what's happening there. Now we are also seeing this market, we're seeing it staying largely positive. The Nikkei 225 in Japan is up 0.78%, so it's positive in Tokyo, while South Korea's Kospi climbs 0.05% right there. The only negative on this chart is from China, mainland China, 0.21% there lower. Of course, just like I mentioned at the beginning of the week, the focus for this week is on what will be the figure for the U.S. CPI report. Remember, in the year 2022, inflation proved to be the name of the game. With that extent into the year 2023, that's what the focus is largely for a lot of market watchers. What to expect is really what is coming on board. Going over now to the commodities chart, oil prices also are staying positive, up 0.50%, $80.50 per barrel. Remember, the benchmark in the 2023 budget that was signed by President Muhammadu Buhari was put at $75 per barrel. Our focus on the program today also would be on the oil sector, looking at where prices are headed, what happened in the year 2022, and all of that. You get to hear that during the conversation segment of the program. For the bullion, the yellow metal gold, $1,884 per ounce, up 0.38%. And down the chart here, the chart here is largely divided. So we have 3 reds and 3 greens. And the agri commodities here are all staying in the negative territory, with the biggest drop coming in for cocoa 3.30% lower at $2,604. So we are seeing a lot of reds going on with the agri commodities. A lot of some have ascribed what we're seeing to seasonal changes. Also, what's happening with the invasion, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We saw how that affected especially the grain sector of the markets. Let's go and see what's happening. Let's look at crypto watch. Now, Bitcoin, $17,439, up 0.20%. Ethereum, Binance, Ethereum is in the negative, down 0.37%. And the Binance coin is up 0.15%, $278. Of course, a lot of storm. I don't know, a lot of market analysts have said, how will the cryptocurrency market weather the storm? Or is the bubble finally up in the faces of investors? Those are numbers we have to crunch for you on the program today. We'll continue to follow the markets, very fast-paced markets, but we'll try to catch up and continue to bring those updates for you on Business Daily. Now, let's take a moment and bring you a roundup of business stories. Take a listen.
Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, saw its crude oil production spiral by 23% from 2020 to 2022, according to the latest data from the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC. Data from the upstream regulatory body shows that the country's oil production averaged 1.49 million barrels per day in 2020, 1.31 million barrels per day in 2021, and 1.14 million barrels per day in 2022. Nigeria has also been struggling to improve its oil output to reach its Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC quota. According to the data from the Upstream Regulatory Body, 2022 had the lowest production of oil as the country saw its oil output dip below 1 million barrels per day in August and September. Still in 2022, Nigeria lost its status to Angola as the largest oil producer for 6 months straight due to rampant crude oil theft, according to OPEC. Britain's financial watchdog has fined the UK subsidiary of Nigeria's Guaranty Trust Bank £7.6 million, equivalent to $9.3 million, for what it said were further failures in its anti-money laundering systems and controls. The Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, said it found serious weaknesses in systems aimed at preventing money laundering between October 2014 and July 2019. The FCA had already fined GT Bank £525,000 in August of 2013 for serious and systemic failings related to anti-money laundering controls. The FCA said GT Bank has not disputed its findings and agreed to settle, thereby qualifying for a 30% discount on the fine, which would otherwise have amounted to £11 million.
There you have it, roundup of business stories. Our focus on the program today, of course, like I mentioned earlier on, will be on the oil sector. A lot of economic watchers and those that monitor particularly the oil sector have tagged the year 2022 an underwhelming year for the Nigerian oil sector. What will the outlook be like for the year 2023, especially as we look forward to the 2023 elections, which at this point we're just counting days away? What should we expect for a sector that contributes a very big quota to the Nigerian economy and generates revenue, of course, for the Nigerian economy? I have my guest in the studio with me. He's Prince Kevin Fineface. He's a security and also an energy analyst, and this doubles to issues we're going to be looking at today because the oil sector has also been marred by vandalism, issues around oil theft. How can that be handled? Welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Morning.
Now, I really want to get your thoughts. Of course, it's a new year. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
How optimistic are you about the events that should shape the year 2023 for the oil sector?
Well, first we need to understand, since we're already going to be having general elections, a new government is going to be coming into place. There's going to be a lot of shifts in terms of governance. In terms of operations, I believe for what has been going on for the past few months since the discovery of those illegal points, as they say, for 10 years and running. There's a lot of change, there's an improvement, there's an increase in our production, even though there's the drop. We still have not been able to meet up with the quota. But I mean, there's an improvement. And if we go by the testimonies of both the Mele Kyari and the Minister of State, we believe by mid-2023, we're going to be having surplus of PMS, fuel. We hope so, because I mean, from their testimony, from what they said, from all the things that have been done, there are a whole lot of pockets of improvements. There's the modular refinery thing coming up. Port Harcourt refinery is going to come up very soon. So there are a lot of hopes. Now, but you see, with all of these hopes, what are the security measures put in place to ensure we don't have to see ourselves going back to what we're coming from?
I think we'll take the conversation from there, but I would hold our fire here and take a short break. When we come back, the program will continue. Please stay with us. It promises to be very insightful.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Inherited a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Really, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
Welcome back, and thank you for still staying there with us on the program. Now, we'll quickly take this report from our correspondent, Chairman Dabeng. Of course, she was on site for issues around oil bunkering in the country, and the report will give us more details. Take a listen.
Security forces have followed the trail to an illegal storage facility near Age, not too far from the Trans-Ramos pipeline's right-of-way. There they have found an unpropelled barge that was alternately loading crude oil and illegally refined automotive gas oil. The barge, Brighton 1, is undocumented and unregistered with the correct maritime authorities. Aboard the vessel, 4 suspects were apprehended. The suspects include the marine engineer who oversaw the loading and discharge operations for the Brighton 1, the skipper of the wooden tugboat, the ship controller who provided logistics and supplies for the Brighton 1, and the driver of the speedboat who was delivering supplies. 2 of the suspects were, however, able to jump ship, while the other 2 who were still in custody claimed to have no prior knowledge of any illegal activities.
Namaga sent me a message. Christopher, I sent me make I tell the badge for our walk about the diesel barge and the crude oil. As I reached there, I say, what did they say now? Diesel barge and crude oil. And I say, this work they don't ban them. Say yes, they don't ban them, but they settle people to do the job for them. They say settle about the community, Ag people and the Tantita people. So it's settled there. Now, 30 people now say arrest me.
I've never been doing this business. I'm a speedboat driver, so I'm on of a boat, and I saw 4. I told me that he wants to buy something and to go and give workers on the barge, so I took him there. When I was coming back, that's when they arrested.
The illegally obtained crude oil was being discharged into a foreign-owned ship, the name and ownership of which is still unknown.
We placed a lot of intelligence on the maritime activities of these illegal ships in Nigerian waters. And due to the restriction of the areas we have to operate, we can't go too far out, so we can only lay ambush for them within our jurisdiction. They got a locally made tug to push them deep into the bush, where they loaded AGO, illegally refined, and at the same time got their pipelines to take crude. Upon investigation, we discovered that 4 of the holds had contained illegal hydrocarbons, some crude, some AGO, illegally refined. Was sometimes the big players in this game, they don't want to come, and when these smaller boys they use tend to exert some fear and whatever, they tend to give them false sense of courage that they've settled army, they've settled this, they've settled that, which is not true. They're just taking a chance. And it just didn't work out for them, unfortunately.
It was estimated by the security agents that there was a 210,000 to 300,000 liters of automotive gas, AGO, on board the Brighton 1 without a metering device. The barge was immediately set ablaze by fire experts.
I want to come to you now. Quite an interesting discovery there. And 2022 can be tagged the year of discoveries indeed for the oil sector, because there was...
In Nigeria?
Yes,
probably.
in Nigeria, to be precise. A lot of discovery, especially for issues around bunkering and illegal operations in that sector. And your last point before we went on that break was on security. So as policies are being drafted, even though we know governance will change, what are your expectations, especially after looking at that report?
Well, if I ask me about my expectations, probably I should just say, what are my fears? You know, because there's one thing coming on air to tell us the discoveries.
Yeah.
What are the things being done? The first question I always do ask is what was actually the risk analysis done prior to establishing these pipelines, prior to having all of this mechanisms put in place? Because if there's been a thorough enterprise security risk management done, they would have known the threats, the likely threats, and also create mitigating opportunities for such. With that, then if there's any breach, you just know how to be able to nip it. So, but if there's none of that been done, it means somebody needs to actually lose his job. Somebody doesn't have any business being there. Because for you to actually have such kind of facility, the crude oil pipelines and the gas pipeline, all of those pipelines are actually national security assets.
True.
Which means there's supposed to be a very serious concentric measures put in place to inhibit, to prevent, to stop, and to get all of this being arrested. So with what they have now, with what we're seeing, it is obvious that it's actually business as usual. After the photo ops, they go back to business as usual. For what the driver, the other young chap said about they've settled the people, it's not actually far from the truth. Because we have this, multi-level, type of criminality that goes on under different names. Illegal refinery still goes on, like you just heard, 200,000+ AGO. I mean, that's huge money, in the market. They also have the crude on the other side. It is in the badge, and they say, oh, this vessels comes in that are not registered. How is it possible that our territorial waters are this porous for the Navy not to know that there are transponders in each vessel? Even if you shut it down, you'll be able to know a vessel was at XYZ nautical miles at a certain point, and if it disappears in thin air, where did it go to? So it means your security agents responsible for the protection of the waterways should have been alerted to know, let's look out for this. Then what is the local intelligence mechanism put in place to ensure that the locals give timely information that will help, there's a whole lot of things that need to be taken care of. And from what I'm seeing, from what we just seen reported, this report is only but a minuscule of the many things that are going on. I tell you why. There are many going on that are not reported. Once the right settlement is done, that I know of a fact, many going on not reported. It is because we have a major problem. And that is why Nigerians need to be sure that the forthcoming general elections, they take it so serious to ensure they have the right people put in place who will take the right decisions and ensure people who have no business being in certain places are not there, not because of political patronage system, but for the purpose of service delivery. It's very important. Now, how do we go forward from this whole thing?
Exactly,
because we don't need to just talk about the problems.
True.
So the first thing first is to be able to ensure that we first ascertain the capacity of those currently responsible in managing our oil and gas sector. Do they have the capacity in terms of, expertise, in terms of manageability, in terms of, leveraging and all of that? If they don't have the capacity, then it means that they need to be asked to leave, and we'll bring in experts that can manage that. Second thing is to also be sure that there is a right remuneration process put in place and the right welfare system put in place. Then you look at the other stakeholders. What are the other stakeholders? We have the community as part of the stakeholders. You have those in the business as part of the stakeholders. You also have the security agents as part of the stakeholders. Then you also have civil society groups. as well as then the media comes in as part of the stakeholder. How have we been able to get all of these people put on board to say that there's proper accountability going on with our oil and gas sector? Today's reality is that you cannot be, having crude and you don't know your quantity. I mean, you can know all of this. You can actually know your deposit, even what you have on the ground with technology. With the new geospatial technology that's in place, you can actually tell quantity. To what extent? You only get to look for quality when you need to be able to test to know how far that you get the quality guys to come and do the quality test. So
now you have laid a background, and I like the fact that you spoke about the problem and also the way forward to tackle issues around security. I also want you, because a lot of this also transcends into issues around Nigeria not being able to meet the OPEC quota, like you stated rightly. Although we have seen some improvement, especially from the months of this, in recent months, we have seen improvement in terms of oil production. Now, what are the places that you think we need to do better in terms of ramping up production and also meeting the quota? Because $80 per barrel in the international market, benchmark in the budget is $75 per barrel. The monies need to come in.
Yeah, money needs to come in. Why are we not doing anything to ensure we plug in those, leakages so that we can have enough? Who are those benefiting from the rot that is going on in the system? If we're able to answer those questions, then we'll be able to have the way forward. For every pipeline, there are different codes assigned to the pipelines. Gas pipeline have different codes. Crude oil have different codes. They all have different codes. How is it possible for locals to know the different codes, to know which pipe to go vandalize? It's a question that we need to ask. It means that there are people who are colluding from the inside to be able to do that. How is it that in the course of carrying out these pipeline installations, that the communities within the belt of this area are not well taken care of, are not assigned responsibility, that they give them a buy-in? How is it so? If they do, then who is not being accountable with the responsibility that has been assigned to these people? So if somebody needs to ask that question, right, and we need an answer for it. Then the third thing is that how is it that as a country, we say we have this amount of losses going on. Then we have a petroleum minister who is supposed to take responsibility and nobody's asking him question. The Minister of Petroleum is the president. And under his watch, we have had the worst form of theft, crude oil theft, and not even improvement. So why is it that the minister still occupies that position? Why do we still have the Minister of State that we see every now and then comes to us to tell us, okay, this is what we're working on. I heard him recently that, 300 naira is good enough, to buy petrol. The same minister has told us that there won't be any increments. He has told us in the past, told us there's going to be some form of gas to auto arrangement, and so we're not saying
actually in the decade of gas.
So we're actually in the decade of that, but are we doing that? We used to buy gas, liquefied petroleum gas for about 2,000 plus. It's about 9,800. I bought the last one, it's 9,800, which is more than 200% increase. So what steps are they taking to see that Nigeria has so much, we truly do not need to lack with what we have. And we don't even have any reason, no excuse not to meet up with the quota. We have the capacity to meet up with the quota. Those leakages were actually designed by the people inside to take care of themselves, which also boils down to one factor, which is the fact that the absence of job security will always make people to look for a way to cut corners. And the absence of accountability, when people are given responsibility, they are not accountable to those people that employ them, then they can do anything and get away with it. So because there's a cobweb that operates in Nigeria, a man steals, he has so many people that he robs off on this stolen wealth. And once he's arrested, like we saw with the Accountant General, I mean, before it was happening, it becomes another story. The thing dies, and after the first media trial, everything is gone. So,
due to the time factor, I quickly want you to react finally to issues around oil infrastructure. There's also there are talks around the Dangote refinery and how it will transform the Nigerian oil sector. The minister also recently said that we expect the Port Harcourt refinery to begin to produce, I think, about 60,000 barrels per day by the end of the first quarter of this year. Let's have you end on that note, oil infrastructure. Okay,
for oil infrastructure, it's sad, and it's also some way hopeful for the country to be dependent on Dangote refinery. A single man was able to build a refinery for like 36 months. He's able to get that up running. So we're going to the 48 months, and we're going to see that upcoming. And it's huge. But a country with the capacity I've not been able to do so. We have 4 refineries that are not functional, and nobody's saying anything about it. If we look at it, let's ask ourselves, let's look at PMS. How many vehicles do we have on the road that use PMS? So what is our daily consumption? We truly do not know. We actually have a projection. The reason why we have projection is because some people need to be able to steal. And that's why the subsidy is not even working. The money goes, subsidies designed for people to be able to transfer the money to other causes. Are we seeing any tangible thing that the money for subsidy is actually doing? No, we're not seeing that. The people are not even feeling it. We're suffering for it. So what are we doing to put in the right infrastructure? I think the key question. Now, I think it's important we get all of our refineries working. If we can't get them working, it's better we privatize those refineries and get people work and get the regulators to be able to monitor properly. Then if we'll be able to do that, then I think we'll be able to have the right outputs, to meet up our quota, at the same time service the nation.
Thank you so much, Priest Kevin Fineface, security and energy analyst. Thank you for coming on the program and sharing your thoughts. Of course, I sense optimism from Kevin Fineface for the oil sector in Nigeria, and that's why we draw the curtains on the program today. Thank you for investing your time with us on the program. Don't forget, you can catch up on all the updates on our social media platforms. Go to Trust TV's YouTube channel, just subscribe, and the information will be at your fingertip. You don't get to miss out on the information as they break. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for joining in. Continue to stay safe.